Okay. Hello, everyone. Before I start my presentation, I want to set expectations. So, I've got, 25 minutes of chatting. There's no way in hell I can cover all of the different topics associated with this. So, what I'm going to do is cover as much as I can at a high level, give you some food for thought, things to consider, and then hopefully take you away, give you something to take forward. Okay? As a bit of background, I have been working in financial industry for investment banks and retail banks for too many years I care to mention, and specifically in data for over 20 years. Okay, the short answers for introducing data governance is you'll have some challenges. Assuming, most normally if someone's starting to look at automated, there will be some kind of framework to start with. And with that, there's a lot of procedures. Almost inevitably, there'll be a few hundred Excel spreadsheets, and if you're really unlucky, there'll be a couple of Access databases to deal with as well. All these people are established. They won't line up with the product that you're choosing or the requirements you're having to deal with. So you need to think about how you're going to manage that. There's going to be an army of people working in that space. Lots of manual exercises. You need to think about the technical hurdles you're going to have to deal with, not just implementing it, integrating it into your own environment, but you also need to think about the type of data you're going to be looking for, what you're going to be scanning. You have to pick the right product for that. Stakeholders. You'll have the people at the top of the business. They only care about business risk. Yeah? As much as I love the nitty-gritties of the engineering, me explaining the subtleties of how I've done something very clever and got something learned and it now finds everything, they don't care. Moving down to the kind of the program board of people, they want to know whether there's a risk or an issue they can fix for you. Once again, they don't care. You then come down to the next level, and you've got the clients. You're dealing with the application owners. What they want to know is, don't make my life harder. So you've got to work out how you do your process there. There will always be resistance to change. So whether it's the people with their spreadsheets that they're creating, or the Access databases, or the application owners who, oh my God, I've got another maintenance task to do. So you need to deal with that. And also there's going to be some egos, because if they've had a process running for some time, you're basically coming in and being told you're not going fast enough. We've got this new automated system. So you've got to manage that to make sure everyone buys into the solution. So, like I said, we might have Access databases, we might have Excel spreadsheets. The next step is you might be lucky or unlucky, depending on how you view it. You might have something like Calibra installed already, where they've been already collecting all of these things. It's a great tool for cataloging and storing that information. Does your tool work? So you need to think about whether the tool that you pick has the right APIs and they work well. So can you pull the data out of your scanning tool and integrate it in? Does it link straight in? All of those different things to consider. With a scanning tool, you're going to be looking specifically, looking at the bottom end of the spectrum, looking at where the columns, the tables are. If you're looking at, sorry, I'll come back a step. So obviously, if you're looking at and scanning the data, how does that link into the glossary? There's a number of processes you can put around that. How do you create the feedback loops for that suggestions? Alongside that, normal kind of more manual processes of declarative. What they're looking for is they go up to the business, they say, tell me about your data. They have this long, boring process where they have to write everything down. It's really good at capturing it, but it's slow and inefficient, and no one wants to do the work. Discovery is great. If you rely on that too heavily, the problem comes is everyone's just going to tick the box and not actually look at it. And this is why it's important, and we'll come on to that later, about how you train your tool to get the right kind of data. Personally, I think a mixture of the both, creating a feedback loop to validate it, because then you can tune your system and you learn from that as you go along. Engineering solutions. You've got to decide how you want to have the application that you want to use. At Morgan Stanley, we chose Big ID. There was a number of key reasons before we dealt with Big ID, and one of the key things was some of the options and how they did the processes. But first of all, you've got to decide whether you're going to go with a SaaS solution or internal hosting. SaaS is great. Someone else's problem. You just put your data in there, does everything, they manage the upgrades, you've got no problems. The other side of that, though, is you're actually copying you're making a store outside of your business with all your personal where all the data is. Do you feel comfortable with that? In my case, most banks say no. Internal storing is benefits, but you've got the upfront costs. But the big advantage of storing internally is, of course, you can now link into your own internal systems. One of the key things here is to think about how do you make the journey easy for your application owner. So one of the things to look at is almost inevitably there's a big store somewhere that says this is all the applications, these are all the machines, these are all the databases, these are all the SharePoints. So if you can link that in as part of your process, you can obviously speed it up, give them specific answers. A few less steps for them to do makes it all happy. The other things to think about with the engineering is how you're going to deploy the solution. If you've got with Big ID, there's a centralized system that stores all the results, and then you put the scanners in each location. So if you've got multiple regions, you can obviously then store the scanners in those locations specifically, and only the results of the scans. The other reason why we particularly liked Big ID was because none of the PI data is actually stored in the application. What the application does for you is the scanner is contained in a Docker image, and what happens is that is the thing that has the sole access to the database. It then sends back the results. So it obviously makes it a lot more secure. When they're moving through, you can also think about if you've got subsidiaries getting through firewalls. These are the things. Now, with anything like this, there'll be lots of engineering teams that you've got to deal with. Security architecture, clearly you're dealing with PI. Plus you're adding in terms like machine learning, they all start panicking. They all start worried about what you're going to do. So you have to think about how you have to sell the story in the right way. And one of the easy things was the fact that Big ID never stored the actual PI data. Trying to explain that to someone who's got a workflow tick list, though, is often the challenge. So if you're going across multiple platforms, you obviously got to engage your cloud teams, your data protection. So the important thing to remember this, and we'll come on to that, is you're looking to catalog. That's the thing you're trying to do first. The last of that is, there's obviously a process where you've got to catalog, and depending on how mature it is, there's a big ramp up to getting this. You've got to engage with everyone. So you've got to decide how you're going to source that process. It's always going to be a bit of manual to start with. So you've got to decide whether it's better to do an internal team, build them up. You might have a support team that can run this, or alternatively, you can outsource to a consultancy. We personally went with a consultancy in this case. Okay, establishing the scope. This is really key. Some of these tools will do cataloging, some of these will do data protection. Some of the stuff that you can do with these tools leads into lots of avenues like data masking. You know where all the data is, great, you can then link that in. Keep it tight while you're building this out, otherwise it just explodes and you'll never get it done. The other thing to do is align KPIs. So there's, like I said, as we go back to, there's always an established program of some sort already there. And with that, they will be looking at the top of the thing. I've got this many applications in my division. And in that division, they're only thinking, how many of my applications are you doing? But you're scanning SharePoints and databases. So one of the challenges we had is we'd say, we've scanned 500 data sources and got all the PI catalogued, but that only means 3 applications. And it's like, oh no, you're failing, you're behind your schedule. No, we're actually ahead by the quantity. Starting to show them the metrics by, Sybase, DB2, whatever, Oracle or cloud, gives them a different view and they start seeing, okay, actually we've got a coverage in a different thing. But once again, it's quite hard at the top. They don't think technology, they merely think their divisions. Identifying the right clients. So you're bringing in a tool that's hopefully cutting edge, really great at doing this sort of thing. So the people you need to deal with on the ground, the application owners, are those people that get it. They're the ones that are going to accept the first few times through this. There's going to be bumps on the road. You're not going to get it right. You're going to have to repeat something and learn. So they'll work with you, but they're also the next people that go, well, now this is where I'm taking the data, future. They're really key to get that and the right thing. After a couple of months of dealing with them, you want to reach out to your early adopters. These guys are equally important. They're a little more tolerant. They see the picture, but they work with it. And by then, your process is honed. So hopefully that's come out better than I expected. This is one of our first processes where we were talking about the different applications we needed to use. So in our case, we used Big ID to do the scanning. But we had to create a front end to fit into all of internal applications. This enabled them, we could do a tick list for the ITSOs, give them nice, easy databases, automatically schedule their scans, give them results. The team reviews them as we were trying to improve the accuracy of the cataloguing. But it's lots of manual steps. As we got through our early majority, we started to move into the people that are hard. A classic example is you talk to a human resources application to say, you can't scan my system, it's full of PI data. It's like, well, yeah, that's our job to find it and confirm where it is. Because the other things you're looking for here is where the authoritative source is in your space. Okay, maturing your process. You've got to look, there's going to be challenges. So some of the problems we've had is we can't suddenly get access to a particular type of database because Morgan Stanley's done something one way, supposed to another. But we learned and adjusted, reprioritised, focused on a different technology and drove that to get it through. The other thing is looking how you can simplify your processes. And that often comes down to how you tune the system to streamline it. You'll learn that's too many steps for an ITSO. It's important to contact all of those the users you're dealing with and the IT application owners to slowly improve the process. Leveraging your data. So not just trying to tune this, you're finding ways to take this into other things. Some of the stuff we looked at was integrating this into graph, finding out where the lineage is, leveraging the data you get from Big ID, also putting it into some of the bigger tools that we've got within our space. We then slowly streamline the process. And after that, what we started to do is as we come through, there's going to be a second scan. So what we're looking for here is how do we reduce the effort? The application owner doesn't want to do the whole thing again. So what we're doing is we're going, here's all the databases that were added since the last time you did anything. Any of these to be included? Yes, no. Schedule your scan. Then we compare it with what they've got and only do the delta there. And then give them the answers only when they're the deltas. Suddenly their workload's a lot less. Knowing how to sell the product and the long-term vision is key for persuading them to do that. Now, this was the fun bit, actually getting the tool to work. All the getting it integrated into the operation bit was quite powerful. So, to be able to tune your tool, your scanning tool, it's important to understand and pick the right tool. And that really is down to the data that you've got. So, in some cases, you might find, I've worked in one place where all of the mortgage documents were originally paper and they're now all scanned in JPEG. Yeah? Some tools are good at scanning that. Others aren't. So you've got to accept there might not be one product that does it all. Our focus in this case was on structured data sources initially. So Big ID comes with some generic method. Oh, come back a sec. So the way to measure this is about understanding how your precision is. So those colours haven't come out quite so well. So with precision, what you're trying to work out is of all of the things that you said were positively an email address, how many were actually true positives and how many were false positives? Obviously, you want everything to be true positive. So this gives you a feedback loop. You learn what was the difference between this data that got wrong and you feed it back in. Likewise, recall tells you about what percentage of the data that you've found is actually all on the right side and true positive. And you keep on feeding back. You're not going to find... So the other thing to consider with this is the question that normally when you're focused on PI data, you're actually asking the application owner, is this country a date of birth or a place of birth? Their answer, no. But it did find country, because you might be in a commodity system that's saying that this commodity is located in this area. So you need to make sure that you design how you put all of these layers together in the right way so that later on, if you expand your scanning into BCBS 239 and you're looking for that, you can distinguish the level. So there's numerous scanning tools out there, all the different things. So in the case of Big ID, you have a number of different levels. So they come with a set of metadata scanning. So this is looking at the table headers, column names, and going, oh, look, that's got social security number in. I bet that's a social security number. It's great. It finds it. But with that, there's lots of false positives and false negatives. So as we were starting out, we tuned it to what we were learning, the language used within Morgan Stanley. And that's where we created our modified metadata scanner. So now we've got a lot better. Next up is your value scanners. This uses regular expressions, which is great, but you can also add parameters on this to say it can't be more than this many numbers or whatever. The first, with a regular expression, the first 5 digits are text, and then your numbers and whatever the combination is. What is great value there is you start seeing the subtleties of how users have used the applications themselves. So one example we had was there was a client-facing application, and the user had been using it for some time, and there was only one field for the user, the client. So they've been using the address name, the first line of the address to put the second client. The application owner had no idea that that had happened. And that, I was really impressed the tool could distinguish between it being a client name supposed to be in Lincoln Avenue. So some of these tools are very sophisticated, and as you're training it, it becomes more and more close and able to deliver that. Then you move up to custom classifiers. So what you're doing is, once again, we know our own values. Sometimes, we might have an internal account number. We know the prefix of that, so we've included that into the fix and tightened it up so that we can tune that. Now, one of the other things we've done is created compound classifiers. So what we do is we say that we know that if it's this metadata and this type of value, the two of them together give us some more accurate information so we can tune it even further. Then we move into the automatic machine learning. These classifiers learn from the data, the feedback that you put in to validate that you've got, this was found here. It picks broader, takes in data points about the type of data, the system, and starts tuning it tighter and tighter. Finally, at the top, you have exact data matching. And in this case, what you can do is, you know where the authoritative source is for this data. And with this, what you can do is do a select on the table, whatever conditions it is, store that in a hashed algorithm, and then scan everywhere for it. So once again, with this solution, we were able to avoid storing the PI data somewhere else, but could scan for all of it. And with all of these finds, we start picking up things where there's lineage. So, to summarise, lock down your scope. Keep it tight. Establish you've got a foundation of data discovery. Choose the right technology for your needs. Scaling it up, big scaling up. Oh, I've done very quick. Choosing the right technology for your use case, whether that's focused on structured data sources to flat files and things like that. Keep your stakeholders and clients engaged. The stakeholders, keep them updated with what's going on. Don't forget that. Also, the ITSOs, they come back with most of the secondary work that we've been doing now with the clients is all of those people that are bought in. So the things we're looking now with leveraging our data, we're scanning beyond PI data. We're now looking for all of the data in, starting to look at the data for BCBAS, integrating that into our data fabric. So we know where the data is in move transition as well as the data at rest, creating continual loopbacks to feedback that in and build a better picture of how the data is. Okay? Thank you.